If you are listening to this and something inside you tightens instead of relaxes, this is not motivation. It is recognition. Because the most dangerous people are not the loud ones, not the confident ones, not the celebrated ones. They are the ones who have been touched by pain so early that their nervous system learned truth before language. Carl Jung once warned that when the unconscious is not made conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. But what if your fate has already been marked? There are people who do not fit into comfort, who feel watched by silence, who sense that life is demanding something from them they cannot name. They don't feel chosen in a glorious way, they feel burdened, heavy, exiled from ease. They attract intensity instead of peace. They trigger others without trying. They carry an invisible weight, as if something ancient has been placed on their spine. This is not spiritual arrogance. This is psychological consequence, because being anointed is not about blessing, it is about assignment. And if you see these signs in yourself, it may mean that your psyche was forged in fire long before you had a choice. And now the unconscious is calling you forward. What people call anointing is rarely warmth. It is pressure applied so early and so relentlessly that the psyche has no choice but to adapt beyond its years. In Jungian language, this is not divine favoritism or spiritual reward. It is psychic differentiation forged under extreme conditions. The soul does not awaken because it is chosen for comfort. It awakens because comfort was never an option. You were not protected as a child. You were exposed. Exposed to moods you had to read before they were spoken. Exposed to silences that felt dangerous. Exposed to instability that made your body learn vigilance long before your mind understood words. While other children learned that the world would hold them, you learned that the world could shift without warning. And so your nervous system grew up too fast, like a muscle forced to work before the bones were ready. Your emotional blueprint was not written in safety. It was etched in threat, neglect, chaos, or inconsistency. Love arrived conditionally or unpredictably. Attention came with a cost. Presence had to be earned. So the psyche did what it always does when survival is on the line. It adapted. It organized itself around staying alive, staying connected, staying unseen enough to avoid harm, yet visible enough to not be forgotten. Where others learned safety, you learned pattern recognition. You could sense the change in a room before a voice was raised. You noticed micro shifts in tone, posture, breath. Where others learned trust, you learned anticipation. What might happen next? What could go wrong? What version of someone was about to appear? Where others learned desire freely, you learned survival. Wanting became dangerous. Needing became risky. Attachment became something to manage, not something to rest in. This is trauma imprinting, not just memory stored in the mind, but survival written into the body. Trauma does not only hurt, it organizes the psyche. It becomes an internal operating system, silently dictating attention, emotion, and behavior. The child learns rules without being taught them explicitly. Pay attention or disappear, read the room or be abandoned. Be useful, be pleasing, be invisible, or be punished. These rules sink below consciousness and become instinct. So you became hyper-aware, scanning constantly, even in calm moments. Hyper-responsible, carrying burdens that were never meant to be yours. Hypersensitive, not because you are fragile, but because sensitivity was once the difference between safety and danger. Your reactions were sharpened. Your intuition was trained under pressure. Your awareness became precise because it had to be. This is where people misunderstand you. They see intensity and assume weakness. They see emotional depth and assume instability. But what they are really seeing is a nervous system that was shaped like a blade. Not weak, weaponized, not broken, adapted. The tragedy is not that you became this way. The tragedy is that you were forced to become it so early, and no one ever taught you how to rest once the danger was gone. You don't fall in love easily, and that in itself is not accidental. Your heart learned early that attachment carries risk, that closeness can become a wound if it is not carefully managed. So you observe, you test, you keep parts of yourself hidden until something familiar flickers in the other person. And when it does, when that old signal is recognized, the fall does not feel gentle, it feels fatal, sudden, overwhelming, as if something ancient inside you has been activated without your consent. This happens because desire is not random. Desire is memory wearing the mask of attraction. What you call chemistry is often your nervous system recognizing a pattern it learned long before you had words for love. Attachment theory explains that we bond through early experiences of closeness, distance, consistency, and abandonment. Those early bonds do not disappear as we grow older. They become the template through which we experience intimacy. You are not choosing from freedom, you are choosing from familiarity. This is why calm can feel dull or even suspicious. Safety feels foreign when chaos was once the background noise of love. Your body learned to associate connection with heightened alertness, with waiting for the shift, with bracing for withdrawal or emotional absence. So when someone offers steadiness, your system does not light up. There is nothing to monitor, nothing to earn, nothing to chase. But when someone is emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or unpredictable, something in you wakes up. The old role returns. The vigilant child knows exactly what to do. You chase unavailable people not because you enjoy pain, but because availability was never stable enough to trust. You learned that love could disappear without explanation, that warmth could turn cold overnight, so your psyche keeps reaching for what it knows, hoping this time the ending will change. You confuse anxiety with passion because love once required vigilance. The racing heart, the overthinking, the longing, these sensations feel like intimacy because they once accompanied it. This is not self-sabotage. It is the psyche trying to complete a pattern that was left unfinished. Carl Jung described this as a repetition compulsion of the unconscious, where unresolved material seeks expression through reenactment. The shadow does not want to hurt you, it wants to be seen. It drags you back into familiar emotional terrain not to punish you, but to give you another chance to recognize what was missing the first time. You are not truly attracted to people as individuals. You are attracted to emotional blueprints, to dynamics that mirror early bonds, to roles you learned how to play in order to stay connected. The caretaker, the pursuer, the one who waits, the one who hopes. Each attraction is less about the present moment and more about the past asking for resolution. And until those blueprints are brought into awareness, until they are named without shame and mourned without denial, they will continue to run your life from beneath your awareness. Healing does not begin by choosing different partners through willpower alone. It begins when you realize that your desire has been speaking in the language of wounds, and you finally decide to listen. There are people who are not satisfied by surface-level living, not because they are superior, but because their inner world refuses to stay shallow. You feel called to depth, not pleasure. Entertainment, distraction, and casual joy lose their flavor quickly, not because you are joyless, but because something inside you keeps asking deeper questions. You are drawn to meaning, to truth, to what lies beneath appearances. Pleasure feels temporary, depth feels necessary. This is often misunderstood as seriousness or intensity, but in reality it is a psyche that has been trained to search for substance, not sensation. You feel restless in comfort. When life becomes too easy, too predictable, something in you grows uneasy. Calm does not feel like home, it feels like waiting. This restlessness is not self-sabotage, it is an internal pressure to grow, to confront, to move toward what is unresolved. Comfort once meant vulnerability for you, a moment when danger could arrive unnoticed. So your nervous system stays alert, even in peace, quietly scanning for what comes next. You sense responsibility without instruction. No one officially assigned it to you, yet you carry it as if it were engraved into your spine. You feel accountable for outcomes, for emotions in a room, for the weight of conversations that others shrug off. This sense of responsibility often began in childhood, when you had to mature early, emotionally or psychologically, to compensate for instability around you. Over time, this became part of your identity, a silent belief that it is your role to hold things together, to understand, to endure. You feel older than your years, yet emotionally raw. There is wisdom in you that did not come from age but from exposure. You understand pain, contradiction, and complexity intuitively. At the same time, your emotions can feel unprotected, easily stirred, deeply felt. This paradox confuses others and often confuses you. How can someone be so perceptive and yet so sensitive? The answer is simple: both were forged at the same time, by the same experiences. You oscillate between isolation and longing. You crave solitude because it is the only place your nervous system can rest, yet you long for connection that feels safe and real. You pull away not because you don't need people, but because you feel too much around them. Then loneliness creeps in, reminding you that isolation is not the same as peace. This push and pull is not indecision. It is the tension between self-protection and the human need to belong. You question yourself relentlessly. You doubt your motives, your reactions, your interpretations. This is not insecurity alone, it is a mind trained to reflect, to self-monitor, to prevent mistakes before they happen. You cannot unsee patterns once you see them. Once awareness arrives, there is no going back to innocence. You notice cycles in relationships, repetitions in behavior, echoes of the past shaping the present. This awareness can feel like a burden because it removes the comfort of denial. And most painfully, you feel like you are here for something, but no one handed you a map. There is a sense of purpose without clarity, a calling without instructions. This is not grandiosity, it is existential pressure. Carl Jung wrote that some souls are shaped by the unconscious to become carriers of meaning, often against their will. If you feel this weight, it does not mean you are chosen for glory. It means you are being asked to turn your inner depth into consciousness, slowly, painfully, and with courage. This path feels lonely because real transformation does not happen in crowds. Before anything integrates, it isolates. Before a new self can emerge, the old structures must loosen, and that loosening often separates you from what once felt familiar. When your inner world begins to shift, the outer world does not immediately adjust. You find yourself standing between identities, no longer fully belonging to who you were, and not yet able to live as who you are becoming. This in-between space is quiet, and it can feel unbearably empty. You cannot return to innocence once awareness arrives. Once you see the patterns, the defenses, the unconscious motives behind your choices, you lose the comfort of not knowing. You can no longer blindly repeat what once felt natural. This awareness creates distance, not only from others but from your former self. Conversations that once felt easy begin to feel hollow. Distractions lose their power. You are no longer entertained by surfaces because you have seen what lies underneath. That seeing cannot be undone. When the unconscious begins to surface, the ego feels like it is dying, because in many ways it is. The ego is the identity you built to survive, to be accepted, to be loved, to stay safe. As shadow material rises, it challenges the stories you told yourself about who you are and why you do what you do. Old justifications collapse. Old roles no longer fit. The mind resists this collapse fiercely, because the ego equates familiarity with safety. Letting go of it feels like annihilation. In this process, grief becomes unavoidable. You will grieve the versions of yourself that survived by shrinking, the self that stayed quiet to keep peace, the self that tolerated less than it deserved to avoid abandonment, the self that learned to perform instead of feel. These versions were not failures, they were adaptations. And grieving them hurts because they once kept you alive. Letting them go feels like betrayal, even when you know they no longer serve you. You will also mourn relationships that only existed because you abandoned yourself. Connections built on overgiving, silence, compliance, or emotional absence begin to dissolve, not always dramatically, sometimes quietly, through distance and misunderstanding. As you reclaim parts of yourself, those relationships lose their foundation. This loss can feel deeply personal, even when it is necessary. You may wonder why growth costs you people, and the answer is painful but simple: not everyone can meet you where you are becoming. Anger often follows. Anger at the timing of your awakening. Why now? Why after so many years of repetition, exhaustion, and self-betrayal? This anger is not regression, it is clarity arriving late. It is the realization of how much you carried without choice. It is the voice of a self that finally sees the truth and refuses to keep absorbing the cost silently. This is shadow work, not self-improvement, not positivity, not becoming more likable, productive, or spiritual. It is dissent. A slow, honest confrontation with what has been buried, denied, and endured. And dissent is lonely because it must be walked inward, one truth at a time. But it is also the only path that leads back to wholeness, not as an idea, but as a lived reality. The truth no one tells you is that being anointed does not mean being spared. It does not mean protection, ease, or exemption from suffering. In psychological terms, it means something far heavier. It means being trusted with depth. It means your psyche was shaped in a way that allows you to hold complexity, contradiction, and pain without collapsing. Not because you asked for it, and not because you were prepared for it, but because life placed it on you before you had a choice. Your suffering was not random, but it was also not chosen by you. This distinction matters. Trauma often gets romanticized after the fact, turned into a narrative of destiny or strength, but the reality is more sobering. What happened to you was not a reward and not a test. It was an experience that forced your inner world to organize itself around survival. Meaning comes later, if at all, and only through conscious work. There is no virtue in pain by itself. There is only consequence. The task now is not to glorify what hurt you. Glorification keeps you stuck. It turns wounds into identity and pain into proof of specialness. The real task is integration. Integration means allowing the full truth of your experience to exist without denial and without worship. It means acknowledging what shaped you without letting it define you. This is slower, quieter, and far less dramatic than turning suffering into a story of greatness. But it is the only way transformation actually occurs. Integration asks you to stop reenacting pain and start translating it into consciousness. Reenactment happens automatically. You repeat familiar emotional dynamics, gravitate toward the same types of relationships, relive the same internal conflicts, all while believing you are making new choices. Translation requires awareness. It requires you to pause and ask not, why does this keep happening to me? But, what part of my past is trying to speak through this moment? When pain is translated into understanding, it loses its compulsive power. It also asks you to stop mistaking longing for destiny. Longing often feels profound, spiritual, or fated, but much of it is the echo of unmet childhood needs searching for resolution. Without awareness, longing becomes a compass that points you back toward what hurt you, not forward toward what heals you. Similarly, you must stop calling wounds intuition. Intuition arises from integration and clarity. Wounds arise from threat and memory. They feel similar in the body, but they lead to very different outcomes. The moment you bring awareness to your emotional blueprint, something shifts. What once felt like a curse begins to feel like responsibility. Not responsibility to suffer more, but responsibility to see clearly, to respond instead of react, to choose differently where you once repeated blindly. This is the quiet power of psychological anointing, not exemption from pain, but the capacity to transform it. And that transformation begins the instant you stop asking why you were given this depth and start asking what you will do with it. If this resonated, it's not because you are special, it's because your psyche is ready. Ready to stop being ruled by the past, ready to turn pain into perception, ready to become whole instead of heroic. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are.